Go back. Mr. Thompson.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairwoman and Ranking Member, for your leadership on reworking the current SBIR program. I'm from Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's been a fairly active state, and with 761 SBIR awards over the life of the program. And my district, the 5th of Pennsylvania alone, has 75 awardees over the life of the program. Of those 75 awards, awardees, there were 297 awards. And those 297 awards totaled $102.5 million. So it's a lot of innovation investment. So it's a great program, and certainly looking at ways to continue to improve it. Dr. Koenig, with the recent economic conditions in the country that we've had, and it looks like it's kind of touched all parts of our economy. Have you seen venture and angel capital that well dry up at all?
Absolutely, definitely. Just the impact right now on companies that I described in terms of the available cash that they have remaining. Almost half of the companies have less than a year of cash, and these are public companies. If you talk about the private companies, it's even worse. What I've seen is a shift that the venture capitalists, where they are funding many of the companies, they're now beginning to place bets and having greater reserves for these companies because they know it's going to take much longer to get to commercialization. And so in the end, there's going to be lots more companies failing as a result of the inability to continue funding from these sources.
So, and I think it probably goes without saying that then these, especially these tough economic times, and that impact certainly emphasizes the importance of the SBIR program.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's funny. I recall when I was head of research at MedImmune, and MedImmune was one of the most successful biotech companies in this country and actually in the world, and was awarded an SBIR 1-2 funding. And I remember commenting specifically that I called the SBIR program the jewel of the government. I really believed at that time that the government did everything right. And when the rules changed in 2003, I was very upset about that because I've seen the value, the impact of this program on what it could do in terms of the lives of people in this country, the development and successes of a company, and the development of very important products that are making differences in the lives of individuals.
Right. Ms. White.
I just wanted to address that as well. Again, as a funder of promising therapies, our goal is to bring therapeutics for cystic fibrosis into the market and into patients. And we work with a host of companies ranging from very small companies just out of academia, 5, 10 employees, to very large pharmaceutical companies. The story I told you in my testimony about Alnara Pharmaceuticals, I think, really illustrates the importance of this program now in this current economic time. I mentioned that Alnara Pharmaceuticals was a company that we'd had our eye on. They produced enzymes, which is something most people with cystic fibrosis must take, but they didn't produce a cystic fibrosis enzyme. We thought we had a product where the company funding had actually dried up. They were going bankrupt, and we knew that there was hope for cystic fibrosis in this company's product. And so we needed to partner it with a larger, more stable company that could carry it through, and using our funding could utilize it as a new branch of their business model. And the result was a positive for everyone, for our patients first and foremost, but also for the company. They were able to bring new employees in. They were able to bring some of the employees who had been working on the product at a smaller company, and an SBIR funding would have been essential as well in that model.
Great. Just real quickly, follow up to Mrs. Dahlkemper's question, and it's probably an unfair question because you all are working with venture capital. Is there anything that you see that would be a safeguard to make sure that those small businesses, especially in rural Pennsylvania, our districts are very similar, who may not have access to venture capitals? I think of all the programs we have, we only have 2 that we've been able to have that connection. Are there any safeguards to make sure that the competing ground remains kind of fair and equitable for those rural small businesses that do not have access to that kind of a resource?
Mr. Thompson, it is a question that has come up, and a number of small SBIR firms have been concerned about now having to chase after venture capital to ensure that they can remain in the game. We think it's an unfounded fear. As I mentioned earlier, the caps and the application of the caps presents special problems within each of the agencies. We think it's poor public policy. The fact that a venture capital firm is resident in Silicon Valley doesn't mean that they can't come to rural Pennsylvania and invest in a project there. I think the problem is that there's two issues. One, there's a great misunderstanding of what a venture capital fund is. The National Academy of Sciences study that was just recently completed indicated that SBIR firms without VC funding were actually more successful at commercializing than were VC-backed companies. And that may change in the future, but that was certainly the case in the past. The second thing that needs to be done, and this legislation provides for that, it provides for tools that will require the agencies to report back in terms of actual contract behavior showing what has happened in the community between VC-backed firms and non-VC-backed firms. And secondly, it provides for an opportunity to have SBIR companies be introduced to outside potential funding sources. And I'll give you a good example of that, and I'll be brief. We're working with the Air Force Research Lab right now at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, who has selected Lintech as a company that will be introduced to a number of venture capital companies that are being brought to AFRL so that those firms can see the kinds of technologies that the Air Force has been paying for. That is exactly the sort of framework that we've been talking about needs to be done on a more consistent basis across all of the services and, frankly, across all of the agencies. And so that fear that has been expressed by your colleague from Pennsylvania can be addressed. And with the greater awareness, the greater knowledge, the greater access to tools, that fear will dissipate.
If I may, also in terms of leveling the playing field, also ensuring that that there are resources for any applying company to really make sure that they understand what goes into a grant application. The relationships that we have developed with the different agencies, with our program managers, have been really important for us, both in advance of an application and then subsequently. So, you know, making sure that the agencies understand the importance of assigning someone to that company and that they're responsible, in effect, for shepherding things through for that company is going to be how you level the playing field, because then you make sure that you're not relying on, or that the company isn't relying on some third party for their sophistication.
Thank you.
Ms. Halverson.